Then I bought me a steam car called a locomobile, whose nature and attributes I faithfully drew in a tale called Steam Tactics. She reduced us to the limits of fatigue and hysteria, all up and down Sussex. It was the heart-breaking locomobile that brought us to the house called Bateman's. We had seen an advertisement of her, and we reached her down an enlarged rabbit-hole of a lane. At very first sight, the Committee of Ways and Means said, "That's her, the only she. Make an honest woman of her, quick." We entered, and felt her spirit, her feng shui, to be good. We went through every room and found no shadow of ancient regrets, stifled miseries, nor any menace, though the new end of her was 300 years old. To our woe, the owner said, "I've just let it for 12 months. We withdrew, each repeatedly telling the other that no sensible person would be found dead in the stuffy little valley where she stood. We lied thus while we pretended to look at other houses, till, a year later, we saw her advertised again, and got her. When all was signed and sealed, the seller said, "Now I can ask you something. How are you going to manage about getting to and from the station? It's nearly 4 miles, and I've used up 2 pair of horses on the hill here." "Well, I'm thinking of using this sort of contraption," I replied from my seat in Jane Cakebread Lanchester, I think was her dishonourable name. "Oh, those things haven't come to stay," he returned. Years afterwards I met him, and he confided that had he known what I had guessed, he would have asked twice the money. In 3 years from our purchase, the railway station had passed out of our lives. In 7, I heard my chauffeur say to an underpowered visiting sardine tin, "Hills? There ain't any hills on the London road." Of the little one-street village up the hill, we only knew that, according to the guidebooks, they came of a smuggling, sheep-stealing stock, brought more or less into civilization within the past 3 generations. Those of them who worked for us, and who I presume would today be called labour, struck for higher pay than they had agreed on as soon as we were committed to our first serious works. My foreman and general contractor, himself of their race, and soon to become our good friend, said, "They think they've got ye. They think there's no harm in trying it." There was not. I had sense enough to feel that most of them were artists and craftsmen, either in stone or timber or wood-cutting or drain-laying, or, which is a gift, the aesthetic disposition of dirt, persons of contrivance who could conjure with any sort of material. As our electric light campaign developed, a London contractor came down to put a 15-inch eduction pipe through the innocent-seeming mill dam. His imported gang came across a solid core of ancient brickwork, about as workable as obsidian. They left, after using very strong words. But every other man of our folk had known exactly where and what that core was, and when Lunnon had sufficiently weakened it, they conjured the pipe quietly through what remained. There was one among them, close upon 70 when we first met, a poacher by heredity and instinct, a gentleman who, when his need to drink was on him, which was not too often, absented himself and had it out alone. And he was more one with nature than whole parlours full of poets. He became our special stay and counsellor. In his later years, he lived to be close on 85, he would, as I am doing now, review his past, which held incident enough for many unpublishable volumes. He spoke of old loves, fights, intrigues, anonymous denunciations by such folk as knew writing, and vindictive conspiracies carried out with oriental thoroughness. Of poaching he talked in all its branches, from buying Cocculus indicus for poisoning fish in ponds, to the art of making silk nets for trout brooks, mine among them, and he left a specimen to me, and of pitched battles, guns barred, with heavy-handed keepers in the old days in Lord Ashburnham's woods, where a man might pick up a fallow deer. His sagas were lighted with pictures of nature, as he, indeed, knew her, night pieces and dawn breakings, stealthy returns and the thinking out of alibis, all naked by the fire while his clothes dried, and of the face and temper of the next twilight, under which he stole forth to follow his passion. His wife, after she had known us for 10 years, would range through a past that accepted magic, witchcraft, and love philters, for which last there was a demand as late as the middle 60s. She described one midnight ritual at the local wise woman's cottage, when a black cock was killed with curious rites and words, and all the time there was like someone trying to come through at ye from the outside in the dark. Dunno as I believe so much in such things now, but when I was a maid, I just about did. She died well over 90, and to the last carried the tact, manner, and presence, for all she was so small, of an old-world duchess. Then, out of the woods that know everything and tell nothing, came two dark and mysterious primitives. They had heard. They would sink that well, for they had the gift. Their tools were an enormous wooden trug, a portable windlass whose handles were curved and smooth as ox horns, and a short-handled hoe. They made a ring of brickwork on the bare ground, and, with their hands at first, grubbed out the dirt beneath it. As the ring sank, they heightened it, course by course, grubbing out with the hoe, till the shaft, true as a rifle barrel, was deep enough to call for their father of trugs, which one brother down below would fill, and the other haul up on the magic windlass. When we stopped, at 25 feet, we had found a Jacobean tobacco pipe, a worn Cromwellian Latin spoon, and, at the bottom of all, the bronze cheek of a Roman horse-bit. Just beyond the west fringe of our land, in the little valley running from nowhere to nothing at all, stood the long, overgrown slag heap of a most ancient forge, supposed to have been worked by the Phoenicians and Romans, and, since then, uninterruptedly till the middle of the 18th century. The bracken and rush patches still hid stray pigs of iron, and if one scratched a few inches through the rabbit-shaven turf, one came on the narrow mule tracks of peacock-hued furnace slag laid down in Elizabeth's day. The ghost of a road climbed up out of this dead arena and crossed our fields, where it was known as the Gunway, and popularly connected with Armada times. Every foot of that little corner was alive with ghosts and shadows. You see how patiently the cards were stacked and dealt into my hands. The old things of our valley glided into every aspect of our outdoor works. Earth, air, water, and people had been, I saw it at last, in full conspiracy to give me 10 times as much as I could compass, even if I wrote a complete history of England as that might have touched or reached our valley.